sophisticated. But I do think that we need to very seriously move towards a heavily regulated system. And by heavily regulated, I mean basically that we have to set limits on the upward speculative bubbles. I mean, and it's not, as I said, it's not hard to do it. Greenspan said, I can, in fact, they have the powers right now to significant extent via the setting of margin requirements on trading. They can do that. Another measure is to tax trades at a very low level. This is something that the Nobel Prize-winning macroeconomist James Tobin proposed about 25 years ago, or I guess now 30 years ago, which is, if you think about a very small tax on all stock trading, for example, if you buy to hold, then that tax remains small. But if you engage in excessive trading, speculative trading, the tax becomes large, and so the tax serves to discourage excessive trading. So that kind of idea, generalized to markets, not just the stock market, but all segments of financial markets, is another thought. A third idea is a variation on margin requirements, which is that that not just for stock trading, but that if we're going to have highly speculative assets being held, then you have to match that with a higher level of cash reserves. Right now, as you probably know, the reserve requirements on banks are down to next to nothing. Most financial institutions have no requirement to hold cash reserves, and let's raise the cash reserves, and that would tend to slow down speculative finance.
I send CDs of our radio shows to both the Obama camp and the McCain camp, and I think I'm actually going to excerpt what you just said and put that up front. That was actually going to be one of my questions to you. If you had an audience, if you had an hour with our next president, what would you say? And I think you just said it.
Yeah, I said it. So I doubt I'm going to get that hour, but whether it's from me or from you or from somebody else, there has to be a real coalition of reasonable people who know. I mean, how much more evidence do we need that the financial markets in their present state of being largely unregulated cannot function? They are dysfunctional. And again, I don't really care if people go to Las Vegas and gamble away all their money, as long as the social consequences for me and everybody else are zero. But when the social consequences are so enormous that our well-being depends on the nature of the functioning of these markets, then we have to have social controls on them. And it doesn't mean that they don't work. In fact, look, the old notion of the savings and loans, the Jimmy Stewart image from It's a Wonderful Life, that's how we built a country with middle-class individual home ownership. It was built on savings and loans that were, totally regulated. The interest rate that they could charge was set by the government, the interest rate that they could pay out on deposits, the length of time that the deposits had to be held before they could be withdrawn. All of these were established by government. Now, you mentioned Reaganomics. In the 1980s and 70s, all these ideas were considered old-fashioned, silly. Let's let the S&Ls do whatever the hell they want to do, buy up, shopping malls and so forth, and we had the S&L collapse. So that's where I think we have to head.
And I think the other thing I hear on Wall Street all the time, and I'm going to wrap this up real quick, is that when I talk to my friends on Wall Street, some of them very highly placed executives at the big broker-dealers and banks, they tell me, John, you don't get it. Wall Street has got to stay deregulated to remain competitive vis-a-vis other banking centers in other parts of the world, like London and other, like Dubai and other emerging banking centers. What would you say to them?
Well, I think that what is going to happen over time is that London is going to have to get regulated too. It doesn't mean that you can't be competitive. It doesn't mean that you can't have markets operating, and it doesn't mean that you can't have highly speculative markets. But the highly speculative markets have to be put over on one side. I mean, that was the essential idea behind the Glass-Steagall system. You can have speculative Wall Street trading, but just don't connect it up to the normal activities of the mundane everyday banks. Now, again, I'm not saying that's exactly the idea. You don't have to follow what we did 70 years ago, but the principle, I think, has to hold, because we know from the last year, the last 5 years, the last 30 years, and throughout the entire history of capitalism that unregulated financial markets are prone to instability and collapse.
Bob, I want to thank you so much for coming on our show. Bob Pollan, professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and the founding director of the Political Economy Research Institute. Bob, if you should be professor emeritus or have an endowed chair or something like that, have your major gifts person give me a call.
Okay.
You're the man.
Okay, thanks.
Just keep speaking the truth. Speak it loudly. Speak it often. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.